Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Landcast. My name is Nathan. I am the Vice President of Chasteen Land and Title. And I am joined, of course, by the President of Chasteen Land, Mr. Jeremy Chasteen. How are we doing today, Jeremy?
Doing pretty good.
So I want to talk to you today about the business side of the land and title business, because obviously it is a business. It exists to make money and to do businessy things. And you've been in this business for how many years now?
I have been doing something related to land, title, energy for more than half my life at this point. So I'm 37. I started when I was like 16. So yeah, more than half my life I've been working in this industry. So
right.
18 years, maybe.
So I think my first question is, when you're in the land and title business, as we are, what is your business? Like, what are you actually selling? What are we actually selling? And what makes us valuable to a potential client?
So that's a really good question. And it's actually something I talk with our employees about often, because pretty much through all of the different industries that need our service, we are still providing one thing, and that is a deep understanding of title, abstracting land, if it involves leasing, being able to correctly, lease the correct properties and negotiate out the lease. But one thing that's important to understand is that, at least for us, we service a wide range of industries. So we have projects that are that we're working on that involve right-of-ways for electric line easements. We've got projects that are for the state of Indiana to widen roadways. We've got projects that are for commercial clients. So that could be anything from, a solar field coming in, a data center. That could be, some major company wanting to refinance. And so we're going into like these, industrial complexes and running title on that. And then we also service the oil and gas industry. So right now we've got projects that involve patent to present, and they involve minerals. I'm trying to think if I've hit all of the industries. But the important part is that while we're providing a similar product across the board, all of those clients have different needs and different expectations of what they're wanting to do. So like our commercial clients are oftentimes, we're dealing with like either a company that's wanting to sell part of their property, or wanting to refinance, or wanting to, purchase something that they can move into that's bigger. And what we're doing there is we're searching for anything that would prevent the closing to going smoothly. So disclosing everything for them. So liens, encumbrances, making sure that they actually know what they're getting into. Can they use the land for what they're wanting to use the land for? With right-of-way companies, what we're looking for is what their goal is to go. The goal that they have with our title is to have a clear picture of who owns this property, who they need to speak to. They also want to know, is there any encumbrances or anything that's going to prevent us from expanding the right-of-way? And then with the state, they're actually primarily looking for easements and things like that. And then with mineral or with energy clients like oil and gas, what they're looking for, what this specific client is looking for is they don't even really care about the fee, simple titles of the land. What they care about is the minerals.
Right.
So one of the things that actually does separate us from a lot of companies is that we're in so many different industries. Mm-hmm. And what we really do try and do is understand what it is that our client is wanting. I think so many people are just like, well, every client just wants the title. And it's like, yeah, that's true. But every client has a different need for that title, which is why our products look different client to client. Some we have a software for all of this, but some of them were producing run sheets and ownership reports. Some of them were just presenting, we call it our own report. It's kind of the Chasteen land and title report that we use for a lot of commercial clients. And then, but each one of those, and we tailor it that way because each client has a different expectation, different need, different, it's a different end result that they're looking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, so one of the things I'm thinking as you talk is obviously one of the things I do for Chasteen is marketing. And something that you learn very quickly in marketing is shut up. Actually listen to what the potential client or customer or whoever you're working for wants. If you're trying to sell something, if you're just working at Verizon and someone comes in to get an iPhone or something like that, the first thing you do is not try to sell them the best iPhone. The first thing you do is listen to what problem they're actually trying to solve. Because until you've actually wrapped your mind around what it is they need, you can't actually help them. I mean, that sounds like the most obvious thing in the world to say. But I think one of the things you're saying that does distinguish Chasteen is, we're actually going to figure out what the real problem is, what you're actually needing, not just put it through kind of a cookie cutter mold, but see what's actually needed on an individual basis.
And we didn't even get into so Chasteen Land and Title is kind of the parent company, and we also have Gibson County Land and Title, which is completely different. We're servicing, oftentimes down there, we're servicing people who are buying new houses, or, you've got an estate, somebody's passed away and their kids are selling their land. And so we're actually dealing with more individuals at that point. And it's still, the end goal is to have clean title so that we can issue title insurance and do the closing. But in that regard, you're also dealing with people who maybe this is their first time buying a house, and you want to be able to explain everything thoroughly to them and give them a good experience in the purchasing process, because we're kind of the last people that they come in contact with before ownership gets transferred. So oftentimes, you're sitting around, you've got the seller is there and the buyer's out there. We are facilitating the transfer of the keys to this new home. Right. We want to hand over a product that our clients can trust, that they not only do they trust, but they also then rely on. And then they, so much of our business at this point has come through word of mouth. Somebody saying, hey, you've got, they'll be like, yeah, we've got this massive project, but we're really struggling to get it done. They'll be like, well, who you should contact? Right. Chasteen Land and Title, they can help. So, yeah. Yep. It's understanding the needs of your people and the people that you work for and providing it.
Maybe this is the same question, but maybe it's a little different. What do you think separates people who succeed in the land business from people who struggle or who fail in it?
There are people a lot of our competitors, and I don't even really classify them as competitors, so much as we have two different business models. They're looking at kind of what they can do quickly and turn around quickly. So we were actually always in oil and gas. And then if anybody's been in oil and gas, they know that oil and gas has ups and downs. And we got tired of the instability of that, where it's our whole business is dictated on whether or not oil is above $65 a barrel.
Right.
We just didn't want that to be our lives. And coal wasn't going to go, wasn't doing great either. So we actually started getting into other avenues by doing a lot of residential work. And that was fine at the time. But where we differ from a lot of companies is that we pivoted into doing a lot of like the hard title, the patent to presence, the commercial side of it. And we got to the point where we don't really do any residential title at all. Whereas a lot of other companies that are similar to us, they get into it, they're doing a lot of residential, and where they pivot to build more like, work coming in is also equally easy stuff that's just like constant turnaround, constant turn. You'll have like these times where a company might ask you to just do judgment and lien searches. And that can be lucrative if you're able to find enough people to send you judgment and lien searches. And they like are, you can get them done in like 5 to 10 minutes. I think part of it is that Brandon and I are just, we came from a world that was like hands-on, boots on the ground, be in the courthouse, dig through records, go down to the basements, go into the little area or like the little storage areas in the basement that are all mildewy and go through old records to try and solve title. And so like the prospect of converting our company or pivoting towards doing anything that would just require us to sit behind a computer and run names all day was not attractive to us. So as far as companies that fail at it, it's a matter of, one, I think you've got to find the right people who also have the same mentality as you, where they want to solve the puzzle. And a lot of them, they don't do that. They're looking at, they want to have quick turn times, so they end up finding, and they're providing a cheap product. So I don't want to be mean, but they end up just finding people who are similar to them. Right. I mean, it's true about all companies. You attract the type of person ultimately, that fits your personality.
What is something that you've learned about this business that's either you've had to learn the hard way or that took you years to understand? Like, what's something that you didn't know going into it and that you do know now?
When I started, all I'd ever done was oil, gas, natural gas. And in my head, I really did not think that there was any other industry that needed my services. I thought it was like the only people who were really doing anything with land and title and abstracting was, the oil and gas people.
Right.
And so it took a while for us to like be like, that doesn't really make much sense, because surely there are other people who need this service. And then to find out that actually the service that we are able to provide is very wide. I mean, I've already gone through some of the industries, but, even surveyors, I was in Lake County, Indiana. And if anybody who's listening is from Indiana, that is way up by Chicago. So Crown Point, Gary, Indiana, that area. And it's a county that you don't want to do almost anything in. You don't, maybe doing a current owner search wouldn't be that bad, especially if you could just do it on the computer. But you really don't want to do a patent to present search there. It's like, I don't even know. It's probably 70 grantor grantee books that you have to go through just to get up to the point where you can stop using them. But I was standing there and I was doing the search, and the guy who was a surveyor came in and we were talking, and back in the day, I would have never thought about surveyors needing what we do, but they do. Oftentimes they come in and do it themselves, but other times it's a complicated project and they contact people like us to do the work. So that was something that I had no idea about when I first started. I thought that, I was very worried when we started our company and oil started going down, down, down. I was like, well, every single person that does title is out of business, I guess. Come to find out, that's not true. Like,
right.
Just because oil and gas goes down does not mean that there's not a need for our services. These right-of-way companies, they're not dependent on oil prices.
Right.
So I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, some of it's all stayed the same. As far as going from state to state, you realize the variety that America has. in the way that we've done things over time. You go down to Texas or Louisiana, even down in like Kentucky, and you start to get into like just strict meets and bounds. I didn't realize, I actually realized this before coming up here, but in Fort Worth, we didn't have section, township, and range. It was like surveys and things like that.
Right.
And so it was interesting to go over to, West Texas and then up here and realize that actually the vast majority of America was smart in the way that they did land. Us Americans, we're when we put our mind to it, we came up with a pretty good system. Squares.
Mm-hmm.
That's smart. I like it. I wish that the people before the 1800s could have thought in those patterns as well, but they didn't. And some of that stuff makes my life very difficult.
Have you had like hard won lessons? Like, oh man, I mean, I really messed that up, or that was, a major regret. Like, I wish I'd known that.
Early on, I learned that you absolutely have to make sure that you do your due diligence in communicating with recorders and clerks' offices to really truly understand what they have in their office and what they have online. I was in Brown County, Indiana, so Nashville, Indiana, and this was like 15 years ago. So at this point, I wouldn't have made the same mistake, but I was there and I asked them how far back they had judgments and liens, et cetera. So we searched back judgments and liens for a certain time period. In Indiana and Illinois, there's laws regarding how long certain liens and judgments are applicable and can be enforced. So we searched back a certain amount of time just so that we can cover that basis. Well, I'd asked them and I was like, all right, I'm good. Turns out they only went back. So like in Indiana, we go back 10, 15 years. Turns out that they did not have their tax warrants scanned back. They only had judgments and court cases scanned back. So their warrants, their tax warrants were only scanned back for like 5 years or whatever. And it just so happened that one of the people that I should have searched had a tax warrant from like 7 years ago or whatever. And so I was actually on vacation when we got that message from the client. I'm thankful it didn't turn into anything like harmful for that client, but it did, because it would have turned into something harmful for us as well. I mean, it would have ruined a relationship. We were able to salvage it by just explaining to them, like, this is completely on us. We have a policy that if we do something like that could jeopardize a relationship, we don't charge them for that search because,
Right.
I learned very early on through, my first boss that the product that you turn in needs to be like perfect. It needs to be good. It needs to be, because I can multiple times remember him, not necessarily about me, though I'm sure he said it about something I did too, but like, that basically we're turning in, used toilet paper is what, like he literally had an abstract that was like, a stack of papers and he just slammed it. He's like, that's basically just used toilet paper, and he tossed it away, So like turning in what you turn in matters. And so, but that was a good learning experience, because now one of the things I tell all of our employees is like, you have to go in and you have to do your due diligence to understand what the courthouse has. You should always step foot into a courthouse, depending on the search parameters, but definitely the type that we do. You should never do that title without stepping foot inside the courthouse. And the reason is that, well, I dealt with this last week. So we have this project that we've been working on for a client, and I was talking to you a little bit about it before we started the podcast. Like there's these energy companies, and they take out these mortgages in like 1996. And they're like 400 pages long. Well, evidently back in 1996, I guess it was hard to scan 400 pages. So what you've got on the computer if you get to that mortgage, is one page. And then at the bottom they handwrite, this is in the filing cabinet where we keep the UCCs. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go up there. I go up there and I talk to the recorder, and she's like, well, that was way before me. So I have no idea where that is. So then she and I have to go like on this like Easter egg hunt, trying to find this 400-page document. We end up finding it. It was clear I was probably I may have been the only, but I'm definitely one of a few that have asked for that mortgage since 1996. Like right. It was sitting in this cabinet. I opened up the binder, and like the rubber band that was holding it together just like disintegrated in my hand. Then we had the same thing in Hendricks where, we go down there. I had to go down there because they did the same thing. They only scanned one page. We ended up never finding the mortgage. They still have not called me to tell me that they found it. Now, thankfully, that mortgage has been recorded in multiple different counties, so we can provide the whole thing and just be like, hey, this is the same mortgage. But Hendricks doesn't actually have the physical copies. My point, though, is that recorders change over time. And recorders don't know what the last recorder did. They don't know, and they definitely don't know what a recorder was doing from 1940s, Right. So, like, I can think of times where I had to ask for a partition book because I was certain there was one, and they were like, there's no such thing. I was like, do you have, like, an area like that you have storage? Because I bet if you went in there is a partition book. She's like, oh, I'll go look. And I was like, okay, thank you. And then sheepishly, she has to come back with this partition book. It's like, but I would say that one lesson of missing a tax warrant instilled in me like this kind of hyper desire to do my own due diligence to understand. It also actually helps speed you up. Like, if you just take about 15, 20 minutes inside the courthouse to like understand what they've got, what they don't have, where things are, you can actually save yourself a whole lot of time in the end by just doing that up front. And I'm sure I know that there are tons of other lessons. This is one of those industries where I'm constantly learning new things, constantly. We're a lot better at this point, but sometimes we actually have a project like this right now where, the initial scope of the project looked like it would be really easy and simple. And so you quote it and you tell your client, oh yeah, I can get that done in like 5 days. That's not going to be a problem. And then you go and you start working on it and you realize, oh boy, actually this turns into 19 chains and this is going to be difficult. So lessons like that, we've definitely learned the hard way. I'm thankful that our product has always been great. And I'm not being prideful when I say it. Like we just provide a really good product. So our clients do forgive us when we have learning curves, like where it's like, we've never ran into this before,
When going back to like the whole due diligence in a courthouse thing, where is the breakdown for the typical abstractor that screws it up? Like, is it laziness? Is it just not doing their due diligence? Is it an experience? Is it like, what is it?
It's a combination of all of those, actually. So for me, I had to go to this county. We had a couple guys there, and they had spent a long time running miscellaneous books. So basically, when you're in a courthouse, you have different types of records. You have deed records, you have mortgage records, you have miscellaneous. You can have a lot more than that, depending on the courthouse. You can have easement books, you can have roadway books, you can have all kinds of books. But miscellaneous, mortgage, and deed are like the most common. And sometimes those courthouses have individual indexes for all three of those things. Sometimes they have one index that covers all three of those things. Sometimes they have a miscellaneous or a index that covers deed and miscellaneous, and then the mortgage index is separate.
Right.
So these guys had gone up there and they literally ran the front of every miscellaneous book because that was the only way to index them. I went up there and I opened up the deed index and I quickly saw that all the miscellaneous were included in the deed index. So that's something that I do often is I will look and see what am I actually going to have to run? Because if I don't have to run those miscellaneous books, I'm not going to. You know,
Right.
I sent out a text. I was like, I don't actually mean it. Like but you know, I'm always looking for a way to not have to do too much work.
Sure.
It's not because I'm lazy, although I jokingly told him that that's why it is, you know, but it's like, for me, it's like, if I can save myself 2 hours, I'm going to do that. I don't want to run those miscellaneous books. Like, that's one of the worst things you can do. If I have to, I will. But if I don't have to, I'm finding a way not to. And I think that this is partly a confidence issue, is trusting in the recorder. So I talked about earlier, you know, recorders get changed every so often. So you don't want to rely on their expertise.
Right.
You want to ask them. I always ask the recorder and I always try to be friendly and stuff like that. But then once I get a kind of an idea, and oftentimes you can actually like quickly know whether or not you can trust the recorder by the way they answer you. But then I go and I figure out, are they telling me the truth? So like Spencer County, Indiana, I was there and I'd asked her, you know, how far back are y'all indexed on the computer? Meaning like, how far back can I just type names in and the stuff will pop up on the computer? And she was like, oh, we're certified back to like the 1970s. I was like, really, on everything? She was like, yes, on everything. And so what I did was I was like, I feel like I should be finding more stuff than I am on the computer. So I was like, I'm just going to go check. So I grabbed a miscellaneous book from like 1975 and I opened up to the first page. I saw who the, you know, let's say it was a contract, who it was from, who it was to. And went back over and ran those names in the computer. It didn't show up. So I did it to another one. And I ended up asking, you know, she was like, oh, well, I don't know. Maybe we're not. So I was just like, okay. You know, so people make that mistake all the time, is just believing that the recorder knows everything about that room. They don't. And I'm not judging them for that. There's a lot of information in that room, and it goes back to like the 1820s. I don't expect her to know what the recorder from the 1820s is thinking. But, you know, if you talk to many landmen or people who do abstracting, you will hear them talk about how happy they are when they go to a courthouse and there's the little old lady, you know, who's been there since like 1970 or whatever. She's just been doing, like, she's never been the recorder. She's just always been happy to be there, helping out, get things recorded. And she knows everything. You can ask her, you're like, have you ever seen this? And she'll be like, yeah, I know where that is. Come with me. And she'll go and show you where it is. We're all happy when we've got that lady because you can trust a lot more that she says. So it's due diligence. It's a lack of confidence. I don't necessarily think it's laziness. I think also it is experience, you know, like I said earlier, like I'm always thinking to myself, how can I make this go faster? Now, going back to what we've learned from making mistakes is that you'll spend a good portion of your time trying to make things go quicker, and then it didn't. And so then you have to literally go back and do the thing that was you didn't want to do. Mm-hmm. So it's learning. It's part of this is like learning when to stop trying to make the job quicker and just do the job.
Right.
But I think it's always worth spending about 30 minutes or so. And it could be longer depending on experience, just trying to understand the courthouse, understand what it is they have, what it is that you're going to need to look at. Talking to the recorders, the people in there, getting a gauge on who should I not ask questions to, who should I ask questions to, you know?
Yeah.
Just getting a feel for everything before you even start your project.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think there's a certain kind of person who's the wrong kind of person, like the bad person you're talking about, who likes the feeling of doing work more than they actually, like, they're not lazy, but they just like to like throw themselves at something. And so they're not like thinking about it in necessarily a smart way. They're not strategizing. They're not taking a step back to think like, how can I do this smartly? They're just like, I'm just going to like keep running at that wall.
Yep.
And seeing if I can climb up the wall. And it's like, well, I appreciate the effort, but like this guy over here got a ladder and put it up against the wall, and now he's climbed over the wall while you're still like working hard over there.
Yep.
All right, final question. This will be kind of my James Lipton style question. So if you could meet, like if I gave you a time machine, you could go back and meet little Jeremy, say like 20-year-old Jeremy, and be like, you know, you're going to go into the land business. What piece of advice would you give him? Like, what's the one thing that you wish you would have known, the one thing that you'd want to tell yourself at the onset of this industry?
Buy Bitcoin.
Buy Bitcoin, yeah.
So you don't have to do it. I'm joking. Man, I would actually wish that if I could go back and tell my young self that, I would be like, it's actually going to be very fulfilling. It's, you know, you're going to actually, I think the way I could maybe convince myself back then is that you're going to, the rewarding part of it is that you're going to spend 10 plus years doing this, learning it, figuring it out. And then you're going to start a company that is going to be a blessing to others. And you're going to actually have employees that you can train and help them figure out this crazy large industry that we call land. You know, I think if I could go back and tell myself that and give myself a vision for what this was going to be, then that would have been great. There's not a lot that I think that I could go back and tell myself. I don't think I could go back to myself and say, hey, by the way, always do your due diligence in a courthouse. Right. You know, like those types of things. Because I think obviously you don't want to make mistakes. Nobody wants to make mistakes, but this job is about going out, doing something new. And if you're able to like receive criticism well and ask good questions, then you'll be fine. I think that everybody in this industry knows that the only way you can do it is by making mistakes. Mm-hmm. You know, that it's going into a courthouse and realizing, you know, I should have looked in every corner and realized that there was, you know, 4 books over here called REMC easements, and they're in no other book. So I should have ran those, you know, and I know now that I don't think I would have told myself any of that, because that's, you know, there's just one, I think my young self would have looked at me and been like, okay, calm down there. Like, you know, like, and then my young self would have probably just forgotten after I told myself that. But I think that I would have just said, hey, this industry is actually fulfilling. It is actually an amazing industry to be a part of. You're going to get to meet a lot of cool people. You're going to get to meet some weird people. You're going to get to do projects that, you know, I mean, we helped with a project just recently that is, I think at this point, if you go to downtown Springfield, Illinois, they have a historic plaque. So they like designated this whole area as a historic area based on our title that we did, you know. Mm-hmm. I think for me, the most fulfilling part of this job is not necessarily the work we do, but the fact that we have built a business that is, like I said earlier, it's blessing our employees, but also enriching the life of our clients, you know, and that we actually are providing this thing that our clients will come back and be like, that was amazing. And I'm like, back in the day, I would have never thought providing somebody with awesome title, you would get some of the praise you get. But you know, right. It is a blessing to like get a phone call and be like I sent a package. This person wanted actual physical copies of everything, and I sent it, and like she called me when she got it, and she was like, I have never seen any abstracts put together this well. Like Brent and I were talking about this, and it's just amazing what y'all are doing. I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
Makes me happy. Didn't know I would ever feel that way about something some title that I did on some land, but here I am.
The Landcast is a production of Chasteen Land and Title. For uncompromising accuracy in land work across oil and gas, commercial, telecom, energy, and more, check us out at chasteenland.com. If you enjoyed this conversation, please leave us a review and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And join us each week as we keep telling the stories of the land industry.